Widowed Apache woman saved me from the river, and now she claims me as hers. The sun had barely risen when he decided to take a walk along the river. The morning air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of wet earth and pine trees. He loved mornings like this, the quiet, the way the sunlight danced on the water, and the peaceful sound of the river rushing over rocks. It was supposed to be just a short adventure, a few hours to enjoy nature before returning to the small town where he lived. Little did he know, that morning would change his life forever. He walked along the riverbank, careful with each step. The ground was uneven, covered with loose stones and fallen leaves. Birds were chirping in the trees and the occasional fish leapt from the water, leaving ripples that shimmered in the early light. He felt calm, almost at peace. For a moment it seemed like the world had stopped, and he was the only person alive. But nature, as he would soon learn, was not always gentle. As he followed the winding path along the river, he noticed a spot where the water ran faster, forming small rapids. The rocks there were slippery with moss, glistening in the sunlight. He paused, studying the water, fascinated by its strength and movement. He had always been drawn to rivers, the way they moved without hesitation, carving paths through the land, never stopping, never giving up. He stepped closer, wanting to feel the cool water on his fingers. One wrong step, and his foot slipped on the wet moss. His heart skipped a beat as he tried to regain balance, but the slippery rock betrayed him. Suddenly, he lost his footing completely. He fell. The river caught him instantly, its cold grip shocking every part of his body. The water was stronger than he expected, dragging him downstream with alarming speed. He tried to grab onto a rock, but the current was relentless, throwing him off balance again and again. Panic rose inside him. He could feel the river pulling him farther away from the shore. His arms ached from trying to hold on to anything solid, and his legs kicked desperately, trying to find a foothold. Fear gripped him. For the first time he realized how small and powerless a person could be against nature. He shouted, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of the water. His lungs burned as he struggled to stay afloat, his hands clawing at slippery rocks that refused to hold him. Each second felt like an eternity. The river, which had seemed so peaceful moments ago, now felt like a wild, unstoppable force. He could see the sunlight reflecting off the water, but it offered no warmth, no comfort, only a cruel reminder of how far from safety he had fallen. Just as despair began to set in, a shadow appeared on the bank. At first he thought it was his imagination, a trick of the sunlight on the trees, but the figure moved with confidence and purpose. It was a woman, tall and strong, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of 100 lifetimes. Her presence was calm but commanding, as if she were a part of the land itself. Without hesitation she stepped into the river, her movements sure and practiced. She reached him with a speed and strength that seemed almost impossible, grasping his arm and pulling him toward safety. The cold water stung his skin, and he gasped as he was lifted out of the current. The woman's hands were firm and steady, her grip unyielding. She guided him to a shallow spot where the river slowed and he could finally stand. He collapsed on the riverbank, shivering and coughing, unable to speak. The fear, the cold, and the shock all came crashing over him at once. His body trembled, and he felt as if he had been touched by a force far greater than himself. The woman knelt beside him, her eyes gentle now, filled with concern. She spoke softly, her voice carrying an accent he could not place, yet it felt familiar, comforting, and strong all at once. "You are safe now," she said. "Breathe. Take your time." Her hands, still steady, checked him over, making sure he was unharmed beyond the obvious bruises and scratches. He wanted to speak, to thank her, but the words would not come. Instead he just stared, amazed at how calm and composed she remained, even as the river had almost taken him. After a few moments he managed to speak, his voice shaking. I don't know how to thank you. I could have," he trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. The thought of what could have happened filled him with terror. The river, with all its beauty, had nearly ended his life. And yet here was this stranger, a woman who had appeared like a guardian, a protector, and saved him without hesitation. The woman smiled faintly, a hint of sadness in her eyes, but it was not the sadness of defeat. It was the quiet sorrow of someone who had lived a long, difficult life. "No thanks are needed," she said simply. "The river is dangerous, but it teaches us respect. Today, it tested you, and it tested me. We are both still here, so we learn." There was wisdom in her words, a weight that he felt deep in his chest. He realized that this encounter was more than luck. It was fate, a meeting that was meant to happen. As the morning passed, the river began to calm, but the chill lingered in his bones. The woman led him to a spot by the shore where he could sit and recover. She pulled a blanket from a bag she carried, wrapping him gently. Her movements were careful, deliberate, like someone who had known loss and hardship, someone who understood the fragility of life. He began to notice the details. Her hair, streaked with silver, the lines on her face that told stories of resilience, and the quiet strength in her posture. She was a survivor, a person shaped by the trials of life, and somehow she had chosen to save him. He tried to find the right words to ask about her, about why she was here, living alone by this river. But before he could speak, she said, "You will understand in time. For now, rest. The river has taken enough from you today." There was no judgment in her voice, only understanding. He realized that she had seen fear before, had faced danger herself, and had learned to act with courage when others might hesitate. Time passed slowly. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the damp earth, and he began to feel strength returning to his body. The woman stayed nearby, watching him without prying, offering a presence that was both reassuring and unyielding. He began to wonder about her life, how she came to live here, by this river, with no one else around. There was an aura about her, a sense of mystery that made him feel both curious and safe. He wanted to know her story, but he also understood that it would be shared when she was ready. By the time the afternoon arrived, he could finally stand on his own without trembling. The woman offered him water and simple food she had prepared. He accepted it gratefully, realizing how hungry he had been despite the adrenaline of the morning. Each bite was a reminder that he had survived, that he had been given a second chance. He looked at her, trying to put into words the gratitude he felt, but the simple truth was that no words seemed enough. I don't even know your name," he finally said, his voice steadier now. She nodded as if she had expected him to ask. "I am called Morningstar," she replied. "It is a name given to me long ago by people who are no longer here. Names are important, but they are only part of who we are." There was a depth in her tone, a calm acceptance of the passage of time and the changes it brings. He sensed that her life had been full of experiences, losses, and triumphs, and that she carried them all with quiet dignity. He sat back, trying to process everything. The river had almost taken him, but it had also introduced him to someone extraordinary. Morningstar had saved him, not just with her strength, but with her presence, her wisdom, and her understanding. He felt a mix of awe, gratitude, and a strange curiosity. Who was she really? What had her life been like? And why had she chosen to help him without hesitation, without question? As the day turned into evening, the river reflected the colors of the sunset. He realized that this morning would stay with him forever. The fear, the cold, the struggle, it all seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of wonder and respect for the woman who had saved him. He knew that his life had changed in ways he could not yet understand, and deep down, he felt that this encounter was only the beginning of something much larger, something that would teach him lessons about courage, trust, and the meaning of human connection. By the time he left the riverbank, supported by Morningstar, he felt a sense of gratitude so profound it was almost overwhelming. He understood that life was fragile, and that true courage often came from unexpected places. The woman who had appeared out of nowhere to save him was not just a stranger. She was a guide, a protector, and perhaps in ways he did not yet realize, a kindred spirit. And as he walked away from the river that evening, he looked back once, catching a glimpse of her standing tall on the bank, watching him leave. The sun glinted off her silver hair, and she gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement that he was safe, that he had survived, and that their paths had crossed for a reason. He carried that image with him, knowing that the river had given him a second chance, and that the woman who saved him would forever remain a part of his story. After the terrifying experience at the river, he still couldn't shake the feeling of awe and gratitude toward Morningstar. The river had tested him, and she had been there to save him, almost as if she had appeared from another world. But now, as he sat on the soft grass near her small, simple home, he realized there was so much more to this woman than the courage he had seen that morning. She was calm, patient, and surprisingly gentle. She had a quiet way of observing him, as if she could see right through his fears, his uncertainties, and even the thoughts he hadn't spoken aloud. Morningstar led him into her home, a modest cabin made of wood and stone, built to blend into the natural surroundings. The walls were adorned with woven blankets and handmade artifacts. There were small, carefully tended plants near the windows, and the smell of herbs hung lightly in the air. Everything about the place seemed purposeful. Nothing was wasted, and everything had meaning. It was clear that this woman lived in harmony with her surroundings. Every object told a story, and even the smallest detail hinted at a life full of experience and quiet strength. He sat down on a low wooden chair while Morningstar went about her routine. She moved with a grace and ease that made him feel both safe and out of place at the same time. She brought him a bowl of warm tea, steam curling into the air, carrying the earthy scent of herbs. He took a sip, letting the warmth flow through him, feeling some of the tension in his body ease. For the first time since the accident, he felt like he could breathe normally again. The fear that had gripped him by the river was still there, lurking, but now it seemed distant, softened by the presence of this remarkable woman. "You must be exhausted," she said softly, her voice calm yet firm. "The river can be dangerous, even for those who know it well. You have done well to survive." Her words carried no judgment, only an acknowledgment of the struggle he had faced. There was a kindness in her tone, but also a quiet authority, a reminder that she had lived through challenges of her own and understood what it meant to confront danger and hardship. He nodded, unsure of what to say. He wanted to ask her so many questions about her life, about why she lived here alone, about how she had been able to save him so quickly, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he simply listened as she spoke about the river, about the land, and about the lessons it could teach anyone willing to pay attention. She spoke with a knowledge that came from years of experience, not from books or stories, but from living closely with nature. He found himself drawn to every word, feeling that each sentence carried a lesson he had never learned in school or from any teacher. Over the next few days, he began to recover from the physical shock of the river. His muscles ached less, and his bruises slowly faded, but the mental and emotional impact stayed with him. He could not stop thinking about Morningstar, her calm demeanor, her strength, and the way she had saved him without hesitation. There was something almost mystical about her, yet she was undeniably real, with a warmth and presence that made him feel both protected and curious. He wanted to know more about her, to understand how someone could live alone yet remain so full of life, so confident, and so wise. Morningstar, for her part, treated him as both a guest and a student. She showed him the way she prepared her food, how she used herbs for healing, and how she respected every living thing around her. She took him to small clearings near the river, where she taught him how to recognize edible plants and track the movements of animals. Each day she shared stories, not fairy tales, but real accounts of her life, of struggles and triumphs, of love and loss. Through these stories he learned not just about her, but about resilience, patience, and the importance of understanding the world around him. One afternoon, as they sat near the river collecting firewood, she told him about her late husband. Her voice was steady, but he could see a shadow of sorrow in her eyes. "He was a good man," she said. "We shared many years together. He loved this land as much as I do. But life sometimes takes more than it gives. I have learned to continue, to carry the memories, and to honor what remains." She paused, looking at the flowing water. It is not always easy. Some days are harder than others. But the land, the river, and the sky, they remind me that life moves forward, and so must we." He listened quietly, feeling the weight of her words. There was no bitterness in her voice, only acceptance and wisdom born from experience. He realized that the woman who had saved him was not just strong in body, but in spirit as well. She had faced loss and hardship, yet she continued to live fully, teaching and sharing, caring without expectation. He felt a deep respect for her, mingled with a growing sense of trust. He could sense that she had chosen to take him under her wing not because she needed to, but because she understood the value of connection, of human kindness, and of sharing what one had learned with others. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. She taught him how to move carefully along the river, how to respect its power, and how to prepare simple meals using natural ingredients. He began to see her not just as a rescuer, but as a mentor, a guide, and someone who could show him a way of life he had never known before. He felt an unusual sense of belonging in her presence, as if he had found a place where the chaos of the world outside could not reach him. He began to understand that this bond was not about dependence, but about trust, respect, and shared humanity. Morning Star also observed him closely. She noticed how cautious he was, how careful he treaded near the river, and how he began to ask questions about the land, the plants, and the animals. She smiled quietly to herself, recognizing the curiosity and resilience that reminded her of people she had known long ago. She saw potential in him, not just to survive, but to learn, to grow, and to understand the deeper lessons the world had to offer. And so, she continued to guide him, offering insights without forcing them, letting him learn through experience and reflection. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, casting a golden glow over the river, he sat quietly beside her. The air was cool, and the sound of the flowing water was soothing. He finally found the courage to speak, his voice soft but sincere. I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You saved my life. I don't know if I could ever repay you." Morning Star shook her head gently. "You need not repay me," she said. "Life itself is its own reward. You survived, you learned, and you are here now. That is enough. My reward is knowing that you live, that you will carry this experience forward. You will remember it, and in remembering, you will grow." Her words settled over him like a warm blanket. He realized that this was not about repayment or debt. It was about understanding, gratitude, and human connection. She had given him a second chance at life, but she had also given him something deeper. The opportunity to learn, to reflect, and to grow into someone stronger, wiser, and more aware of the world around him. That night, as he lay in the small cabin, listening to the soft sounds of the river outside, he reflected on everything that had happened, the fear he had felt, the struggle to survive, and the miraculous rescue by Morning Star. All of it felt like a turning point. He understood that life was fragile, that danger could appear unexpectedly, and that courage and kindness could come from the most unexpected places. He also realized something else. He felt a sense of connection, of trust, and of belonging that he had never experienced before. Morning Star was not just a rescuer. She was a guide, a mentor, and in a way, a family figure. He felt honored to be in her presence, to learn from her, and to share even these few days of life together. He understood that the bond they were forming was rare, precious, and transformative. As the first stars appeared in the sky reflecting on the river's surface, he knew that this experience had changed him forever. He had fallen into a river and almost been lost, but he had been saved by someone extraordinary. And more than that, he had begun a journey of learning, trust, and human connection that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Morning Star sat across from him, quietly mending some of her clothes, her face calm and serene. He watched her, filled with admiration and curiosity. He realized that he wanted to know everything about her life, not to intrude, but to understand, to learn, and to respect. And in that quiet moment by the river that had almost taken him, he felt the beginnings of a bond that would grow stronger with each passing day, built on trust, respect, and shared humanity. It was the start of something rare and meaningful, a connection that neither the river nor time could wash away, a bond between two people, brought together by circumstance, shaped by courage, and strengthened by wisdom. He knew that he had found someone extraordinary, and he felt grateful, humbled, and quietly inspired. And as the night settled around them, he closed his eyes, knowing that life, with all its uncertainties, could still offer moments of hope, guidance, and profound human connection. As the days turned into weeks, he began to feel more at home in the small cabin by the river. The fear and shock of the accident had faded, replaced by a growing sense of curiosity and wonder about Morning Star and the life she had built here. Each morning he woke to the sound of the river rushing past and the soft calls of birds in the trees. The air was fresh, carrying the scents of pine, soil, and the herbs Morning Star grew in small pots and carefully tended patches outside the cabin. Every day seemed to bring new lessons, new challenges, and new glimpses into the remarkable life of the woman who had saved him. Morning Star had a rhythm to her day that was both simple and profound. She would rise before the sun, collecting water from a nearby spring, tending her small garden, and preparing breakfast using fresh ingredients from the land. He followed her routines, sometimes awkwardly, but always learning. She was patient with him, never scolding, but offering gentle guidance when he struggled. There was a quiet pride in her movements, a sense of dignity and self-respect that left him both awed and inspired. One morning, as they worked together to gather herbs along the riverbank, she spoke about the importance of observation and patience. "You cannot rush life," she said, plucking a small green plant and handing it to him. "Everything has its time. The river flows at its own pace. The plants grow when they are ready, and people, they learn when they are ready." He listened closely, trying to absorb her words. There was wisdom in everything she did, and he realized that her life, though quiet and solitary, was rich with meaning and purpose. He also began to notice the depth of her knowledge about the land and the river. She could tell which plants were safe to eat, which berries were ripe, and which herbs could soothe a sore muscle or ease a headache. She taught him how to read the signs of nature, the tracks of animals, the direction of the wind, the movement of clouds. Each lesson was a small window into a world he had never truly noticed, a world that required attention, respect, and understanding. He felt a deep admiration for her, realizing that her strength was not just in her ability to survive, but in her ability to understand life and live in harmony with it. Their bond continued to grow, built on trust and shared experiences. He began to understand that Morning Star had chosen to include him in her life, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to pass on knowledge and offer guidance. He was a guest, yes, but more than that, he was someone she had taken under her wing, a person she wanted to help learn, grow, and heal. There was no pressure, no expectation beyond respect and willingness to learn. In her presence, he felt safe to be himself, to ask questions, and to make mistakes. One afternoon, as they sat by the river mending fishing nets, she began to speak of her past in a way she had not before. "I have known loss," she said quietly, her fingers working skillfully. "I have known love, and I have known grief. Life has taken much from me, but it has also given me the strength to continue. I have learned that the heart can endure more than we imagine, and that kindness can be found even in the hardest times." Her eyes met his, calm and steady. "That is why I helped you, because life is precious, and every person deserves a chance to continue, to grow, and to learn." He listened, struck by the depth of her words. There was no self-pity, no bitterness, only a quiet, enduring strength. He realized that the courage she had shown in rescuing him from the river was just a small part of her character. Her true strength lay in her resilience, her wisdom, and her ability to continue living fully despite the hardships she had faced. He felt a mixture of gratitude, awe, and a desire to learn as much from her as he could. Days turned into weeks, and he began to feel the changes in himself. The fear he had carried since the river incident was gone, replaced by confidence and a growing understanding of the world around him. He could move along the riverbank without hesitation, identify plants and tracks, and perform small tasks with skill. Each time he succeeded, he felt a surge of pride, knowing that it was Morningstar's guidance that had taught him these lessons. But more than skill, he was learning something deeper: how to observe, how to respect, and how to connect with the world around him. Morningstar also began to open up more, sharing stories of her life, her late husband, and the community she had once been part of. She spoke of celebrations, struggles, and moments of joy and sorrow. He listened with rapt attention, realizing that these stories were more than entertainment. They were lessons, glimpses into a way of life that valued connection, respect, and resilience. She spoke with honesty and clarity, never embellishing, never pretending. Every word carried weight, and he felt privileged to hear them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the river in shades of gold and orange, he and Morningstar sat quietly watching the water flow. The river, once a source of fear, now seemed peaceful and familiar. He realized how much he had learned in just a few weeks, not only about survival, but about trust, resilience, and human connection. Morningstar had become more than a mentor. She was a guide, a guardian, and a presence he had come to rely on in ways he had not anticipated. She turned to him, her expression gentle. "You have grown," she said. "Not just in strength, but in understanding. You see the world differently now, do you not?" He nodded, feeling the truth of her words. He had changed. He was no longer the uncertain, fearful person who had fallen into the river. He had learned to observe, to trust, and to respect. He had learned that courage was not just about physical strength, but about patience, understanding, and the willingness to face life with an open heart. He began to notice the small ways she cared for him as well, leaving a warm blanket nearby when he fell asleep outside, offering food when he had not asked, sharing quiet moments of conversation and reflection. These gestures were simple, but they carried profound meaning. He realized that Morningstar's claim on him was not about control, but about care, guidance, and a protective love that went beyond words. She had saved him once, yes, but she was now shaping his understanding of life, showing him how to navigate it with courage and respect. As the weeks passed, he found himself thinking about the future, his own and hers. He wondered if he would ever leave this place, or if the bond they had formed would keep him here. He realized that he did not fear the answer. He was grateful for the lessons, the guidance, and the trust that had developed between them. He understood that life had brought him to this river, to this woman for a reason, and that the experiences he shared with her would stay with him forever. Morningstar, too, seemed to recognize the growing bond. She began to include him in more aspects of her life, showing him how to prepare more complicated meals, how to craft small tools, and even how to navigate the land beyond the immediate riverbank. She encouraged him to observe carefully, to think critically, and to respect the lessons the land had to offer. Each day, he felt more confident, more capable, and more connected. Not just to her, but to the world around him. One afternoon, as they sat repairing a small section of the cabin roof, she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "It is rare to find someone willing to learn, willing to listen, willing to understand. You have that gift. Cherish it and use it well." He looked at her, unsure how to respond. He wanted to express his gratitude, his admiration, and his growing respect, but words felt inadequate. Instead, he nodded, letting his actions speak, continuing to work alongside her with care and attention. He began to see the depth of her life, not just the hardships she had faced, but the wisdom, courage, and love that had carried her through. She had experienced loss, yes, but she had not been broken. She had endured, learned, and grown, and now she shared her knowledge and care with him. He realized that the bond they were forming was rare and precious, a connection built on trust, respect, and the shared experience of life itself. By the time he had fully recovered from the river accident, he understood that his life had changed in ways he could not yet fully comprehend. He had gained skills, knowledge, and confidence, but more importantly, he had found someone who cared for him in a way that transcended ordinary friendship. Morningstar had claimed him, yes, but not in a possessive way. She had claimed him as someone she would guide, protect, and care for, as family might. And he had accepted this claim, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude, trust, and a deep sense of belonging. And so, life continued along the river, peaceful yet full of learning. Each day brought new lessons, challenges, and moments of connection. He knew that the bond he shared with Morningstar was a gift, rare, valuable, and life-changing. He also knew that he had been given more than a second chance at life. He had been given the opportunity to grow, to learn, and to experience a connection that would shape him forever. The days grew longer, and the bond between him and Morningstar deepened in ways he had not expected. He had come to her as a stranger, lost and frightened after nearly drowning in the river. Now, weeks later, he felt as if he belonged in her world, a world of quiet strength, wisdom, and care. The cabin by the river had become a sanctuary, a place where he could recover not just physically, but emotionally, learning lessons he had never known before. Morningstar had begun to treat him as more than a guest. There was a subtle shift in how she guided him, a deeper involvement in his daily life. She began to teach him things beyond survival, how to anticipate the river's moods, how to prepare more elaborate meals, and how to observe the land and its creatures with patience and respect. Each lesson was accompanied by stories from her past, tales of hardship and triumph, of love and loss. Through these stories, he came to understand that her life had been shaped by experience, resilience, and quiet determination. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the river in shades of gold and orange, Morningstar spoke in a tone both gentle and firm. "I have saved your life," she said, her eyes calm and steady. "And now I will watch over you as I would a member of my own family. You are part of this place, part of these lessons, and part of the life I have built here." He felt a moment of surprise, not fully understanding what she meant. "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously. She smiled softly, as if expecting his question. "I mean that you are no longer just a visitor," she explained. "You belong here, with me, by the river in this life. You have learned, you have grown, and you have shown respect. That is why I claim you, not in ownership, but in care. You are under my guidance, my protection, and my watchful eye. Just as I care for the land, I care for those who are part of it." Her words were both comforting and overwhelming. He realized that she was not speaking of control or obligation, but of deep protective care. She was offering him a connection, a bond that went beyond friendship, a chosen family built on trust, respect, and shared experience. He felt honored, humbled, and slightly unsure how to respond, but he understood the sincerity behind her words. Morningstar had faced loss and hardship, and she had chosen to open her life to him, to include him in her world in a meaningful way. In the days that followed, her claim became more evident through actions rather than words. She would check on him before sunrise, making sure he had eaten and was ready for the day. She would guide him carefully along the riverbank, correcting his movements when necessary, but always with patience and encouragement. She taught him not only to survive but to thrive, to understand the delicate balance between courage and caution. Each time he succeeded at a new task, she would nod approvingly, her eyes reflecting pride and a quiet joy that he had not seen before. He began to notice small gestures of care that were not part of formal lessons. Morningstar would leave fresh water nearby, prepare food in advance, and ensure that he had warm blankets during cold nights. These actions, simple yet profound, showed the depth of her protective claim. She was not demanding obedience or submission. She was offering guidance, support, and an enduring presence in his life. He began to understand that her claim was an expression of love in its purest form, a commitment to watch over, nurture, and protect. One afternoon, as they walked along the river collecting firewood, Morningstar spoke again about her life. She shared stories of her late husband, recounting the joys they had shared and the grief that followed his passing. "Life takes much from us," she said quietly, "but it also leaves us with lessons, memories, and the ability to care for others. That is why I help you, because you are here now, and your life has value. You have potential, and I will help you reach it." He listened, struck by her honesty and openness. There was no bitterness in her words, no self-pity, only a deep understanding of life and the human heart. He realized that her claim on him was not about control, but about offering him guidance, safety, and the wisdom she had gained through her own experience. He felt a growing sense of respect, trust, and even admiration for this remarkable woman who had rescued him from the river and now sought to guide him through life. As the weeks passed, he noticed changes in himself. He felt stronger, more confident, and more capable than he had ever imagined. He could move along the riverbank without fear, identify edible plants, and perform tasks with skill and precision. But the most significant change was internal. He had learned patience, observation, and the importance of respect for the world around him. He began to see life differently, understanding that courage was not only about physical strength, but about resilience, wisdom, and empathy. Morningstar's claim became clearer through shared experiences and rituals. She invited him to participate in daily activities that had deep meaning in her life, preparing meals with care, tending the garden, gathering herbs, and observing the changing seasons. Each activity was more than a chore. It was a lesson in respect, responsibility, and connection. He began to understand the depth of her teachings, realizing that her claim on him was not about possession, but about inclusion, mentorship, and nurturing. One evening, as they sat by the river watching the sunset, he felt a sense of peace he had never known. The river, once a source of fear, now seemed like a friend, a witness to his growth and transformation. Morningstar's presence was comforting, grounding, and reassuring. She turned to him, her expression gentle but firm. "You are learning well," she said, "and you are becoming part of this life. That is why I claim you, to guide you, to protect you, and to ensure that you continue to grow."
Her words filled him with a mixture of gratitude, awe, and humility.
He understood that she was offering something rare and precious, a bond built on trust, respect, and care. He realized that her claim was not about control, but about guidance, protection, and the shared experience of life. He felt honored to be included in her world, to learn from her, and to share in the quiet rhythms of her life. As time went on, he began to notice the subtle ways she expressed her care. She would ensure he had enough food, check that he was rested, and offer advice without pressure. She guided him through challenges with patience and encouragement, allowing him to learn from experience rather than dictating every action. Her claim was both gentle and firm, a balance of care and guidance that left him feeling supported and respected. He also began to understand the emotional depth of her claim. She had experienced loss and hardship, yet she continued to live fully and offer care to those who entered her life. By including him in her world, she was sharing not only her wisdom but also her trust, her protection, and her understanding. He realized that her claim was an expression of love, not romantic or possessive, but profound, nurturing, and enduring. One afternoon, as they prepared a meal together, he felt a deep sense of connection. Morningstar moved with confidence and grace, demonstrating skills he had only recently begun to grasp. She handed him ingredients, guided his hands, and encouraged him to pay attention to detail. "Life is in the details," she said softly. "If you observe, if you listen, if you care, you will understand more than words can teach."
He nodded, appreciating the subtle wisdom in her words.
By now, he had come to see Morningstar not only as a teacher, but as a guardian and a trusted companion. Her claim on him had become a natural part of life, an unspoken understanding that she would guide and protect him, and that he would respect, learn, and grow under her care. It was a rare and profound connection, one that transcended ordinary friendship, built on trust, experience, and mutual respect. As the sun set behind the distant hills, he and Morningstar sat in quiet reflection, the river flowing steadily before them. He realized that life had brought him here for a reason, and that the bond he shared with her was life-changing. Her claim was not about control. It was about guidance, protection, and a shared journey through life. He felt honored, humbled, and deeply grateful for her presence, her wisdom, and the connection they had formed. In those quiet moments, he understood that Morningstar's claim was a gift, a rare, meaningful, and transformative gift. It was a promise of guidance, a commitment to protection, and an offer of inclusion in a life rich with wisdom, resilience, and care. He knew that the lesson she taught him would stay with him forever, shaping him into a person capable of understanding the world, appreciating its beauty, and navigating its challenges with courage and respect. And so, life continued along the river, marked by shared work, mutual respect, and growing trust. The bond between them strengthened, a connection built on guidance, care, and the enduring presence of someone who had chosen to claim him, not as possession, but as family. He knew that this connection would shape his life forever, providing lessons, protection, and a rare sense of belonging that few people ever experience. By now, he had spent weeks living beside Morning Star, learning from her, observing her, and slowly becoming part of her life. The river that had once been a source of fear had become a symbol of his growth, and Morning Star had become more than a rescuer or a teacher. She had become a guide, a guardian, and a chosen family. Each day brought new lessons, challenges, and moments of connection that strengthened the bond between them. He realized that he had been given something rare, not just a second chance at life, but a chance to belong, to learn, and to grow in ways he had never imagined. The mornings began early, with the soft light of dawn filtering through the trees. He would rise to find Morning Star already tending the garden, collecting herbs, or preparing breakfast. She moved with a quiet confidence, and he followed, learning to anticipate her rhythms, to help without being told, and to observe the small details that made life by the river so full and meaningful. The work was hard, but it was rewarding. Each task, no matter how simple, carried purpose and significance, teaching him patience, focus, and respect for the land and for life itself. One morning, as they walked along the river gathering firewood, he noticed how naturally she moved, how sure and steady her steps were. "I used to come here with my husband," she said softly, glancing at the water. "We would walk along this river, collect wood, fish, and enjoy the quiet. Life was simpler then, but it was full. Even now I feel connected to those days. They taught me to endure, to respect, and to care." He listened quietly, understanding that her words were more than stories. They were lessons. She was showing him that life was about connection, about cherishing moments, and about learning from every experience. He realized that the claim she had made over him was not about control or ownership, but about including him in the rhythm of her life, guiding him, protecting him, and sharing the wisdom that had carried her through so many years. As the day wore on, they worked together in harmony. He helped gather food, prepare meals, and maintain the cabin. Each action was guided by her instruction, but also by a growing sense of independence. Morning Star encouraged him to observe, think, and act, teaching him not only how to survive, but how to live fully and thoughtfully. He began to understand that her claim was a form of mentorship, a promise to care for him while allowing him to grow into his own strength and abilities. One afternoon, while tending the garden, she spoke again about her past, this time about the community she had once been part of. She described festivals, ceremonies, and gatherings, painting a picture of a life rich with tradition, connection, and meaning. "Even though I live alone now," she said, "the memories remind me that life is about people, about sharing, about learning from each other. That is why I include you. You are part of this life now, and I will guide you as one I care for deeply." Her words resonated with him. He understood that this bond was not ordinary. It was built on mutual respect, trust, and care. She had saved his life once, and now she was giving him the tools to live fully, confidently, and thoughtfully. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that she had chosen to include him in her life and that her claim was an expression of love, care, and guidance, a gift that few people ever receive. The following days were filled with learning and reflection. He grew stronger, more confident, and more attuned to the rhythms of nature. He learned to move silently along the riverbank, to notice the subtle signs of animals, and to prepare meals using the land's natural offerings. Each skill brought him a sense of accomplishment, and each day, Morning Star's approval, though quiet, filled him with pride. He realized that her guidance had shaped him, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. He had grown in ways he never expected, and he owed it to her patience, wisdom, and care. One evening, as the sun set and painted the river in shades of gold and pink, he and Morningstar sat together quietly, watching the water flow. The river, once a place of fear, now symbolized strength, resilience, and life's constant movement. He felt a sense of peace he had never known. "I don't know how to thank you," he said softly. "You've given me more than I could have imagined. You've changed my life." Morningstar looked at him with gentle eyes. "No thanks are needed," she replied. "Life is not about repayment. It is about connection, growth, and learning. I claim you not because I expect anything in return, but because I care. You are part of this life now, and I will guide you, protect you, and help you become the person you are meant to be." Her words filled him with a profound sense of understanding. He realized that her claim was not about possession, but about inclusion, guidance, and nurturing. She had rescued him from the river, yes, but she had also rescued him in a deeper sense, by showing him how to live, how to grow, and how to connect with the world and with another human being in a meaningful way. As the weeks continued, their life settled into a comforting rhythm. Each day brought new lessons, new tasks, and new moments of reflection. They worked together, learned together, and shared quiet moments by the river. He began to understand the depth of her care, the wisdom she carried, and the rare and meaningful bond they had formed. He felt honored, grateful, and profoundly changed by her presence in his life. One morning, while collecting herbs along the riverbank, he asked her a question that had been on his mind for days. "Do you ever feel lonely?" he asked gently. Morningstar paused, looking out at the flowing water. "Sometimes," she said softly, "but life teaches us that loneliness is not always absence. It is also reflection, growth, and understanding. I have had many years alone, but I have also had many experiences that shaped me. Now, having you here, sharing in this life, I feel a sense of connection that I did not expect. You are part of my life, and that changes everything." Her words touched him deeply. He realized that their bond was not just about guidance or survival, it was about mutual support, understanding, and shared human experience. He had been saved from the river, but now he was part of something larger, a life of meaning, care, and connection with someone extraordinary. The following days were filled with simple, meaningful moments. They prepared meals together, collected firewood, observed the river, and tended the garden. Each action, though ordinary on the surface, carried significance. He began to see life differently, more patiently, more thoughtfully, and more respectfully. Morningstar's claim was not about possession. It was about teaching, nurturing, and protecting. He felt blessed to be part of her life, and he carried this understanding in every action he took. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the river, he reflected on the journey he had taken, from falling into the river in fear and uncertainty to being guided, protected, and included in a life of meaning. He realized that Morningstar's claim on him was not just about care. It was about trust, respect, and a shared bond that would last a lifetime. She had given him guidance, protection, and wisdom, and in return he had learned to trust, to grow, and to understand the importance of connection. As the stars appeared and the river glimmered in the moonlight, he felt a sense of belonging unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had been claimed not as a possession, but as someone worthy of care, guidance, and inclusion in a life filled with wisdom and resilience. Morningstar had saved him once, and now she had saved him again, in a deeper, more profound sense, by showing him the meaning of trust, respect, and human connection. In the quiet that followed, he realized that he would carry the lessons of this place, the guidance of Morningstar, and the strength of their bond with him forever. The river, once a place of danger, had become a symbol of life's flow, of resilience, and of the extraordinary bond between two people brought together by fate, courage, and care. He understood that the connection he shared with Morningstar was rare and precious, a bond that transcended ordinary friendship. It became a chosen family relationship, built on trust, respect, and mutual support. And so, as the river flowed steadily before them, he and Morningstar continued their life together, working, learning, and growing. He knew that their bond was enduring, built on care, guidance, and a shared journey through life. He had been saved from the river, but more importantly, he had been given the chance to be part of a life that was meaningful, full, and connected. The story of that morning by the river, the accident, the fear, and the rescue had transformed into a story of trust, growth, and family. He had come to understand the depth of Morningstar's claim, her wisdom, and her care. He had learned to respect the world, to face life with courage, and to value the rare, meaningful connection they shared. And in that quiet, flowing life by the river, he realized that he had found not just safety, but belonging, guidance, and a bond that would stay with him forever. The river, the cabin, and Morningstar were no longer just part of a memory. They were a living, breathing part of his life, shaping him into someone stronger, wiser, and more connected. And as he looked at Morningstar, calm and serene by his side, he understood the true meaning of being claimed, not as property, but as someone cherished, guided, and included in a life full of care, love, and respect.